Today's guest is Jackson Stevens, CEO and co-founder of SpareBox Technologies. Jackson's journey is anything but conventional. He started out studying classical music and helping launch programs at the Colorado Symphony, then transitioned into tech leadership at CKD Technology Partners, where he helped build Redline, the first integrated self-storage management platform. He went on to join SpareBox Storage as its second hire, crafting their customer experience and operations playbook, and scaling them to over 7 million square feet in just 18 months. In 2024, Jackson spun those hard-won insights into SpareBox Technologies, a company dedicated to helping operators bridge the gap between traditional management and fully tech-enabled, remote-first operations. In this episode, we'll explore his playbook for rolling out automation, his practical take on AI and data in storage, and his bold predictions for how our industry will evolve next. Let's dive in.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the pod, man.
It's been a long time coming. I appreciate you both agreeing to have on a humble vendor that gets to, high five you guys when we're traveling around the country.
Yeah, we don't have to tell people that you bribed us a couple times, do we?
Well, was it a bribe?
No, I'm kidding.
It was a couple of 20s among friends. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
small potatoes.
Excited to dig in with you, man.
Sweet, man. Well, really pumped to get started here and talk about you. I wanna start off going way back before storage. I think if I'm not mistaken, you were a classical musician, right?
Yep, I sure was.
Okay.
So I had a propensity for music. My brother, who's 9 years older than me, played guitar in a ska band. This was in the 90s,
Ooh.
Of course. And, I saw his band play and I was like, boy, drums look like a lot of fun. So sure enough, fifth grade came around and picked up some drumsticks and had a pretty supportive family. So had the opportunity to do some summer music camps, to get private lessons. And I really took to it. And in high school, I said, well, why not major in it and go to a conservatory and, learn about Baroque musicology and other things that have not a ton of direct application in my daily life today. But, I figured, why not? So that's what I did. And those were the days where I was in a rehearsal or a practice room or studying music at a desk for 12 hours every day. So it was pretty intense, and got to a pretty high level and kind of confirmed this belief that I did not want to become a professional musician. I got a taste for it in the classical world, mind you, and it was not for me. So yeah, now I'm in storage as most people will appreciate. You never really know where you're going to end up.
Is it truly, I've seen the movies, obviously Drumline, one of my favorite movies out there. No, I'm
Nick
kidding.
Cannon, everybody's favorite.
Representation of Jackson's life is the movie Drumline, obviously.
Yeah, it was based on my life, being on a drum line in the South,
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I do like that movie, but Whiplash is actually more of my kind of movie. I
Sure.
really do enjoy that. But is it really, I'm assuming studying also the composition, but also were you close yourself in a room and practice?
Mm-hmm.
Did you play something particular, an instrument?
Yeah. Yep. I was a drummer and a percussionist. So
you weren't kidding. Okay.
Yeah. So when so my degree, if you look at the paper, it just says BA in music, which is something that gave me a little bit of an existential crisis because, to bore you with the details. So I went to the University of Denver and they have a music conservatory there and they do offer a BM, a Bachelor of Music, but I was tracked to do a dual degree program and they didn't let you do the BM if you were going to do that dual degree BA MBA program. The punchline to this is I didn't get accepted in the MBA program, so it was all a little moot at the end of the point. But the difference between a BM and a BA in music is the BM had twice as many rehearsal and private study requirements as the BA. Now, fun fact, I actually did all of the requirements of a BM. People didn't know I was a BA. They found out when I was a senior and they're like, oh, that's weird. It just meant I had all these other general education requirements I was responsible for too. So I was kind of burning the candle at both ends. But you'll learn that that's kind of how I run my life. So,
Always
but
the
yeah,
overachiever, right? You just gotta.
yep.
Maybe we might dig into the CrossFit, so it's just like self-inflicted pain from day zero.
Yeah, hence the trend, hence the theme in all of my life aspects. But yeah, I'm definitely an intense person, which is probably why I found myself into this role with SpareBox Technologies too. And yeah, but it was, it was an intense period of my life, right? Practicing 4 to 6 hours a day on top of classes, on top of work, on top of volunteer stuff. Yeah, it was a lot. And, now I keep this on my desk to remind me that I do have a background in it.
Nice.
And that's like about all I have going for me. So
I know you guys can't see this, but he just flashed us a giant a
yeah,
little keyboard.
it's called a melodica. So it's like a
Okay.
harmonica. You blow into it, but
Oh,
it plays like a piano. So if you've
that's
ever seen like John
awesome.
Batiste, who was
Yeah, yeah.
the band leader for Stephen Colbert's, that's the Late Show, right? Or the Tonight Show. I always get those conflated. He plays that a
Yeah.
lot. So he was kind of the inspiration for that.
Stick around for part 2 of this episode
Yeah,
where
there you
Jackson plays musical instruments.
Yeah, I'll play Hot
I
Cross
have a
Buns
feeling
for
that
you.
5 minutes in, this is going to be like the episode of the most like diatribes off topic of things, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for. So
Yeah.
dive me a little bit into that, Jackson, like, getting into where you are now. I mean, again, like, it's fascinating. You studying music theory, like performance, everything. So, I mean, with all that, there's discipline and pattern recognition, ability to have to work with people, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess, do you still draw from a lot of your early beginnings today as now the CEO of SpareBox Technologies?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a couple of points. Everybody, I think I was telling this to you or someone at the Mountain West show. Everybody I know from music school now works in tech, either as a developer or an engineer or a designer or a product owner. So there's that. And apparently, another aside, the music school at the University of Denver is named after Robert and Judy Newman, who are big philanthropists in the mountain region. Robert Newman owned an engineering firm. Like I think they built aircraft or something pretty technical. And one day he realized all the engineers at his firm played a musical instrument. So he was like, "Oh, fascinating!" So he got really into the arts and put his name on the music school at DU. So there definitely is something there, right? Between people that grow up playing musical instruments and just their approach to problem solving and thinking statistically and pattern recognition, to your point. And as a percussionist, the point that I make too is what's really nice about it is it's very multidisciplinary, right? When I get tired of playing xylophone, I can move to the snare drum. When I get tired of playing snare drum, I can move to the timpani. When I get tired of that, I can move to drum set. And it's the same thing in like an early stage company, right? It's like, okay, I just did a bunch of product work. Now I need to go do accounting. Okay, now I'm going to do some marketing. Okay, now I'm going to work with the sales team and think about sales motion, do some analysis on our efficiency. So I have my hands on a lot of different things, and it allows me to kind of be creative and not be in a narrow lane, which is where I start to feel very itchy. So I think it all worked out for me.
Now, musician turn tech conductor.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like going into like what's your secret to keeping yourself and the team now focused? Creative. I'm assuming there's a lot of creativity flowing through the calls, offices. And so like customer obsessed.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a great answer for this. I mean, I'm someone who likes to think about how we work, right? And I think you find that in tech, which is probably why I was drawn to it. And when I wasn't in tech, I was like, I think tech is where I should be. Like I like the, people are wearing t-shirts and they're talking about ideas. Like that seems like a good fit for me. And as it relates to kind of the creativity in the space, like, and I owe a lot of this to working at a really creative agency, which is how I got my start in tech. So a lot of frameworks around how you structure work, how you problem solve, how you reconcile differences in opinion. So we really try to create an open culture where people can bring their ideas and not be afraid to be criticized or shot down. It's really important, and I find a lot of big organizations just really trip over themselves because they lose that. It's something I admire about Swivl too. I see this with your team. It's why I've always really liked working with you guys and chatting with you, because I think you take a page out of that book as well. You're pretty thoughtful and intentional about how you approach work and ultimately what you're trying to achieve. So you probably, I'm seeing heads nod, which folks listening to the audio won't see, but I think we're, birds of a feather on that front.
Let's dive into that just a little bit. I mean, there's so
Cool.
much backstory like around like how you went from Symphony to storage in general that we could dive into. But peaked interest.
That's going to be
around,
the name of the memoir too. Good work,
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, from Symphony to Storage.
Nice.
A memoir.
TM. I'm gonna go grab that URL real quick.
Right.
But I'm kind of like curious, like, I mean, like how internally do you foster that culture? Like, what are you guys actually doing? Like from a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month perspective? Is there a culture deck that you guys review? Like, and it comes to mind because we really are trying to be intentional around that as we're growing the team recently too, around like, how do you continue to foster this? It's I don't want to say easy, but it's easy when there's 4 or 5 people. It's a lot harder as you add, 10 extra heads on top of that.
Totally. It is a real challenge to scale that kind of thing. We haven't gotten so formal yet. Keep in mind, we've been at this for just over a year, but we made a big point, I think last summer, so maybe 6 months in, to really evaluate like, hey, what's our mission? What's our vision, and what are our values? To me, I always thought that was really important. In some other organizations I've worked in, I think kind of bury the lead and they lose focus on that front. And then everything else follows from there, right? So our mission is to transform self-storage operations. And, I think so far we're doing a pretty decent job, especially with one of our tools, but everything flows down from that. And then in terms of like what ceremonies or rituals, whatever agile word you want to use, during the week, I think it's important to reflect, to have these kind of retrospectives, to be honest about what went well, what didn't go well. And the energy flowing through all of this, enabling it, is trust, because ultimately you need to feel comfortable around the people that you're working with and putting your shoulder to the wheel with every day. Otherwise, it's really easy for people to withhold, and to perhaps not bring their most creative self out of fear of punishment or looking dumb. So if you can foster that kind of environment, you can really see some interesting results from a productivity standpoint. I'm sure you guys see it too.
Yeah. Are you guys co-located? Like, are fully remote? Like, maybe just a
Yeah. So me and my co-founder are in Denver. Our head of sales is in Phoenix. We have a customer success manager in Phoenix. And then our head of customer success is in Oregon. So for those familiar with the industry, you can probably guess exactly where they came from previously, which is a funny thing. It's a tight-knit industry that way. But yeah, so, it's the first time that I've worked with an organization that's been distributed in that way. Like, I've certainly worked with people not in my hometown, but to have kind of these key pillars of the organization distributed around the country. But what's nice about that is it allows us to be very intentional with our time when we go to trade shows, right? To ensure that we have a chance to just do some team bonding, some team time. And there's times where they come out to Denver too. So we'll certainly do more of that the bigger we get. I mean, you all, right back at you, I'll be curious as to what you all are doing, because you just, like, I don't know if it's fair to say, it seemed like you just doubled in the last few months. So, scaling all of this with a brand new cohort of people is no easy feat.
Yeah. I think I can touch on it. And we have more than doubled. It's a really fun and exciting time for us. And I think, really building the organization is a problem that I think, like, between Kyle, Rodolfo, myself, and our other co-founder, Chuck, like we're constantly like talking about, like, the organism is now the thing. Right. And I think that started, first of all, with like trying to go like, what got us here, and documenting that. Right. And then that's become like a set of core values. And, I say this when we onboard every new employee, that, our core values as we grow might change. Like, it's something that we have to continue to revisit. But I think making sure that those things are like stated up front, right? Like one of our core values is just being curious, right? Curiosity.
Awesome. Ours too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and failing forward, right? And transparency and like all these kind of things that like enable the collaboration, the innovation to happen there. And then, I think we do a couple of things where, we're trying to make sure we foster a culture of showing your work, right? We're not in the same room all the time. And so, how do we allow for people to be celebrated when they build something new, whether that's a sales deck or, a new feature in the product or something. And so like, how do we showcase that to everybody and celebrate that? And, we try to do that weekly. We're not all in the same room. We're not all in the same Slack channels. Like, but we all come together once a week and try to celebrate those small things collaboratively. So I think it just comes back to continuing to repeat that process, right? I use the core values in conversations with externally and internally constantly. And I think, internally it's important because like, we want to make sure that, our staff understands that we're methodical, right? And when we're solving this problem, we're going to do this methodically, right? And we're courageous, and like then you start to use frameworks around like, are we the decision that we're making a one-way door or a two-way door problem? Okay, well, if it's a two-way door problem, like default to action, take that accountability to go out and do something and try it, and then we're not going to be scared when something fails, as long as that we're being methodical around how we're learning from that failure and getting better at it the next go round, right? And so just continually doing that and being open around that conversation, I think is ultimately what we're hoping to do. To your point, it's really important to have those face-to-face touch points as well too. The sales, marketing, go-to-market team in general gets to see each other a lot at trade shows as an industry that's dominated by trade shows. But we have a lot of keyboard warriors as well in the business, and so it's really important to be able to try to get them, to break bread together whenever we can get everybody in the same city.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to steal "show your work." I think that's beautiful and like so right.
And there's so many different ways to do it. Like we do it in an actual meeting, but like I think we try to encourage and from a leadership perspective, it has to start with us, right? Like, and some of that can be asynchronous too, right? Like maybe I'm working on something and I just want to create a quick 30-second video that I'm going to share in Slack, right? Like, hey, I thought this was really cool. I mean, just today, Jenna, I know a lot of people in the industry know Jenna on our team, posted a new phone number that she's been testing for specific like feedback and workflows in our voice channels, right? And so,
cool.
like, hey, go play with it, right? Go see this. I just finished this thing. Go and check it out. It's not perfect, but I want feedback around what we're working on, which is super cool. So some of this can happen synchronously, and some of it can happen asynchronously.
Totally. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm sure you and I are going to be talking a lot more about this as I go into year 2 and 3. Right now, your point, there's 5 of us. We do have some contractors offshore that help on the development front. So there may or may not be an opportunity where we get to meet them. But for the folks that are stateside, we're all going to the shows together right now. So there will come a point where that'll break apart and we'll have to rethink, how we still keep this high level of collaboration going, even though they weren't seeing each other every month or whatever.
So going up to kind of your transition into storage, I didn't know this about you, but you, after your stint at the Symphony, being a musician, like you mentioned, you decided to get into a little bit of software. I'm just kind of curious about that. Like, what was your aha moment to kind of realizing software can truly transform an industry, but also, even, correct me if I'm wrong, how did you get to land Red Dot and help them create Redline, which I don't know much about?
It's funny because as people in the industry are getting to know me, and I've been fairly under the radar until the last year, I kind of share the story, and that's always the thing where people's eyes get really big. Because for me, it's like, Oh yeah, that was just a gnarly project, and that was a long time ago. But it's an interesting background into this idea of building technology in the space and innovating in self-storage. So I'll give you the whole story. So, after college, I was fundraising at the Colorado Symphony. And, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I don't think fundraising was it. And I think I discovered like the Tim Ferriss podcast and some other podcasts like this, where you're hearing people who are really thoughtful and they seem to, again, kind of be hovering around tech. And then you hear this quote like, software is eating the world. So to me, it was like, okay, well, this kind of seems like where I want to be. I don't really know what that means yet. As far as computer science is concerned, I was doing a little bit of programming when I was in middle school, but like very basic HTML, Python stuff, nothing crazy. I was fortunate enough to have a friend working at a dev shop that was slinging custom software, custom web apps and websites, and really hit it off with the CEO and the founder of the company. So they brought me in to do business development, which I did for a small stint and then transitioned into product ownership. And about 3 years in, we had this company called Red Dot Storage reach out to us, and they had just put a new COO in place. That COO is Chuck James, who is now the president and chief operating officer of SpareBox Storage. So he was a month into his job at Red Dot Storage and said, boy, we have a problem. We're using a piece of software that we have to transact when customers call in. Red Dot at the time had an internal call center. And at times it would take 5 minutes for the software to load, to render, while a customer service agent was on the phone with a customer. So clearly like a big bottleneck and a big breakdown in the operation. So he decided that, well, let's evaluate our options in terms of building our own version of this, which, was a property management system, facility management system. So they knocked on our door because we actually did a project for Chuck at a previous company. And he liked us. And so we embarked on this journey together. And it's really funny how these things happen, right? You had me and a couple of folks from my agency that upon first glance, like this didn't seem like so hard of a project. And then you had new leadership and new technical leadership at Red Dot that was like, yeah, we agree. Same story. This should be pretty straightforward. 6 months, nothing crazy. And we'll get there. So we actually had a 2-phase approach on that project. And after the first phase, we had to go back and say, ooh, hey guys, we really missed our estimate on this. This is going to be way harder, way more expensive. So somehow the deal proceeded, and we delivered Redline after a year to Red Dot Storage. So that was their own proprietary facility management software, and that was in 2018. I then became COO of that agency, was kind of overseeing all of the projects, and then after a little bit of time, I ended up joining the Red Dot team to oversee the product internally. So that was how I got into self-storage. I custom built an FMS, which I guess people nowadays are like, wow, that's a hell of a way to get into the industry. At the time, it was just a really hard project. And, I think I definitely lost some hair during it because there were some very scary sprints during that effort. But we got there. It was a really great project and product, and I was really proud of it. Even now, 8 years later, there were some really novel things that piece of technology was doing that I think people are now kind of dabbling in. But this idea of kind of automating some things in the field along with customer billing, like not many people were doing it. So yeah, I mean, we carried that spirit into Red Dot, and then obviously a number of us from Red Dot transitioned to start SpareBox Storage, which happened in 2020. And then to really fast forward to the rest of this timeline, 3 years later, we started looking at starting SpareBox Technologies. We launched SpareBox Technologies March 12th of last year. So it's been, a year and 2 months?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's the whole story. That you got it all.
That's awesome. I love the origin stories. Storage is like one of you probably say this about a lot of industries, but like I feel like storage is like one of those industries that goes so unnoticed in most people's day to day. Like you just until you need storage, you don't think about storage, and so like
Totally.
People who have made their careers in storage, like how you get into it, like unless it's a family business, is like always so interesting and winding. Yours is actually one of the most like straightforward ones, like, you were working for a tech company and had a customer and then built a really good, great product for them and was like, hey, I'm gonna go internal for it and stuff. So that's super cool. I'm curious, like, just around like lessons learned in those early days that like still carry on today. Like, you're fresh into storage, you're building your own FMS. Like, what's something that you always reflect back on as like, hey, this is something that is a core learn that we can't forget as we continue to build and innovate in the space.
You have to spend time with your users, and I know that's not hyper relevant or specific to self storage, but like I remember when we kicked off the design phase of that project, I flew into Chicago and then drove to DeKalb to go tour a property, to go do a walkthrough with a property manager. And this is something that's like so fundamental to good product design, is like you really need to spend a lot of time with the users. Self storage, especially, the thing I like to comment on in designing software technology in this specific industry is it's really misleading in terms of, like, you think it's going to be so simple, but as soon as you start learning about the edge cases, I'm sure you all ran into this too, where it's like, wait, that happens. Because, like, it's a very human business. You're dealing with people coming in and out of a facility who are accessing their belongings, that, there are laws around how you can control their access, especially if they stop paying their bill. So there can be times where we can be in the quote laboratory and say, oh, I know exactly how this should go. But if you're not actually spending the time out in the field or with the end user or the customer, whomever, you're really going to miss some key points. And this industry is just replete with edge cases in the software world. Like, you assume that, okay, well, in the case of, I don't know, your standard FMS, okay, a customer pays for a unit, they pay for it monthly. That's great. It's like, oh, what happens if they transfer into a unit with a different price? Like, I remember, like, there were all these little micro hurdles that we ran into as we were going down this path, and we like, oh, really? Like, that happens? That happens more than 2% of the time? They're like, oh yeah. It's like, there's all these little things that feel like edge cases that are actually like primary requirements for the software to work. And it's really tricky in self storage specifically. I've learned a lot of hard lessons that way, where I just assume that, like, oh, they won't need this, and then very quickly they do, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess now we're gonna sprint to get this deployed and shipped. So
There's a term for it, coming from my Six Sigma background, called Gemba walk. Have you heard this?
no,
Okay, so
I'm familiar with Six Sigma, but I haven't heard that term.
So this is a Japanese. It's the root of the word is a Japanese word. Obviously Six Sigma, Toyota, etc. But ultimately, the whole point of a Gemba walk is like to go out and see. And it's like to get into the real place where value is created. So even though you're a software company, and I mentioned keyboard warriors, right? It's like really easy to hide behind a keyboard, but like, you're solving a problem for operators. And so like the ability to like go out and see and be in the field and see what's actually happening. Again, Toyota, so manufacturing, most of it's about walking around the actual manufacturing facility, but the idea of like getting out there and see it, because like in a manufacturing setting, like you might have a default, and the default is happening from like some random process that's happening, and like how a screw is being tightened, and like unless you're like on the floor looking at it, you would never understand that that was a problem, right? And that's that edge case that you're talking about. And so going out seeing, for us, like we'll go to call centers, right? Or in a couple of days, I get to go do a gimbal walk at a call center, like see the agents actually like use the tool, and like I know me and Kyle and some of the product team, like when we were out in Arizona, we were walking around StoreQuest call center, and we're like looking at them like opening 15 tabs to like do a task and to find information. We're like, man, like who knew that that was a problem, that agents are like, we could solve that really easily for them. We already have this data, in our system. We just need to present it to them in a an easy interface. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well said. Having been in your shoes on that front before, because I oversaw the call center at SpareBox Storage. Yeah, I said it's so important to go see it in person, because you're gonna see things you would never imagine would be going on. And you just have to see it with your own eyes to be able to design around it.
You think it's you know, whenever you're looking at outside to other vendors or even competition, unfair advantage that you actually, you know, come from being an operator and now to leading a technology company. I'm just kind of curious how you instill some of those learns to your team that, may have come from other parts of the
Sure.
industry, right? And they're not all operators. Um, how do you plan to share kind of like that knowledge and make sure everyone's on the same page?
Boy, that's a good question. I don't think we'll ever be able to fully share it, but a few tactical things we do. So when we hire a new team member, because we have an affiliation with SpareBox Storage, right? SpareBox Storage, SpareBox Technologies. We actually send the new employee to go shadow a property manager. Like we send them down to Texas for a day or a couple of
It's
days.
awesome.
Yeah, just to go do some work in the field, like to see what it's like. That goes a long way. Even though we have a team full of folks that have been in the industry, they've never actually seen what the job is. Um, and then, of course, it's a lot of information sharing and documentation, right? Like we've kind of built. My customer service manual at SpareBox Storage was like 120 pages by the time that I left. So there was a lot in that, and I'm able to bring that over and be like here you go, plug this into ChatGPT and get a summary, I guess, or be able to use retrieval augmentation or whatever to try to find an answer to something that you're curious about. So
Yeah, the person that's there now is lucky to have those tools.
right,
'Cause
yeah, for sure. When you have that much documentation, and admittedly, I think our field. So I wrote the first version of the field operating manual. And that was, I think, 30 pages, and today it's probably 40. So my counterpart that was running the field wasn't quite as fastidious as I was, but I don't think that would shock anybody at SpareBox. So um, no, it's really but the trick is everybody does it slightly different. So you have to, even though there's a lot of benefit to being an operator and kind of understanding like, oh yeah, like the goal was to increase your NOI at the end of the day. So we're trying to get people to move in more than they're moving out. We're trying to find ways to increase revenue either through existing customer rate increases or other means. We're trying to find efficient marketing. We're trying to ensure that our bad debt's not going up. So like the goals are all the same, but how people have kind of figured out how to solve them, you know, differ ever so slightly. So it was something that we thought was really important when we started. Was we're not necessarily here to foist our opinion on how things ought to be operated. Like obviously we're not going to be able to get around that entirely, but we wanted to provide good tooling just to allow people to, gain some efficiency. That was really the play.
I want to dive in, like, I mean, and obviously coming from the background that you had,
Mhm.
FMS was the first tech. Like, you guys have a number of products that you have in the market today. Like, how do you think about areas of opportunity in the self storage space, and then maybe like even diving into like when you see this problem, right? Like, what's Jackson's process for breaking down a problem and starting to attack that solution?
Boy, that's a good question too. For me, it was just, it was always like this can be a little better, right? I think that's really where it stemmed from. It's like I'm really tired of manually cleaning this spreadsheet. Like there's got to be a faster way. There's got to be a better way. I mean, I can give a specific example of something that we'll work on in the future. Um, Something that it's been kind of a pet project in a way, but I think something that's going to be really valuable for the industry, and that's auctions. So when we first started doing this at SpareBox Storage, we ran into a situation where we were partnered with a call center. Um, but we kind of quickly realized the first time we were doing auctions, our partner call center is not going to be able to take these auction winner calls. So therefore, me and my counterpart in the customer service team are going to have to take these calls. So that was a painful day. I remember it very clearly. Right, we were calling auction winners once the auction closed. Um, we did not have like a call center software for our internal HQ. So I was literally leaving voice messages for people because they were seeing a Denver area code and this auction was taking place in Texas. So they weren't answering it. I was then moving down the list to call the next person. Invariably, the first person would be calling back because they got the message and needed to take a payment. It was just a disaster. So, there came a point where I said, gosh, like I know the technology exists where we can make this a lot easier. So I was pushing really hard for a system where once the auction closed, the auction winner got an email saying, not congratulations, because I learned that goes to spam very quickly, but hey, here's your invoice for the unit that you won at this auction. Click this link. So we built an auction payment flow that connected into the PMS that we were using, where auction closed. We grabbed the information from the storage auction platform that we were using. We then plugged it into our system. It kicked out an email to the auction winner saying, here's how much you owe. It tied out that amount back into the PMS. Once they paid and it verified the payment went through, the auction winner got the gate code and got the DaVinci lock effectively to go and access the unit and move out. Because I was not about to take 200 phone calls in a day to collect payment and give people access instructions. So people do not do auctions very efficiently. And this is something that I've been like working on for many years. So I'm really excited to pick that project back up once we get to it later this year. But yeah, I mean, effectively, it's just kind of this like, it starts be curious, right? Like maybe there's an easier way to do this. And I guess for some that could be laziness, but for me it was like no, like I just like things to hum. I don't like to trip over manual processes. If there's a way to find automation, and this is Swivl's bread and butter, so I'm sure you guys will get this. It's like, why not? Like let's find a way to do this in like almost a beautiful way. I think maybe getting back to the Toyota production system, right? It's like let's just find like a very streamlined path towards accomplishing what it is we're trying to accomplish and then scaling it from there. So that's, I suppose, how I would think about it.
Solve your own pain points. I mean, again,
Yeah.
another benefit for like kind of having the operation experience is that you're like doing these things and going, hey, this can be better. And then you're, looking for root cause. And sometimes it's simple that there's just not a system in place. And you're like, why is there not a system in place? Well, there's not a system in place because somebody hasn't built it. Like, okay, you just go through like that 5 whys. I'm curious.
I'm sure you guys run into it, right? Like when I talk to people outside of the industry on some of the products that SpareBox Technology has, they're like, you're telling me that's not used by everybody already? Like, specifically like a remote field application, they're like, what? like that seems so simple and so obvious. And it's like, well, yeah. And there's these dynamics as to why there hasn't been as much adoption on that front. It's kind of if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of situation, where, like doing things on paper works, right? But when you try to find scalability, which is what SpareBox Storage was really doing, right? It's like finding scalability without hiring additional resources, then it's like a whole nother problem solving exercise. And additionally, this is where the curse of knowledge comes in, right? And it's one of the benefits to, I guess, I didn't grow up in storage starting as an assistant manager in an extra space. So I'm sure if I did that for a number of years and then started running a tech company, it would be a lot harder to kind of view these through fresh lenses, because I would say, oh, well, this is how it was always done. So you have the curse of like these decades of best operating practices that now kind of put the blinders on to creativity around new ways of doing things. And we see this all the time, right? Like outsiders come in to kind of disrupt things and innovate things. Again, much like I'm just parroting, it seems, the cultural DNA of Swivl, but I see it with you guys all the time. It's the same idea. And to be concise, like you just said, Mason, solve your own pain points. I think that's really the magic of it all.
Yeah, I love it. Self-storage industry has like traditionally been a pretty like slow to adopt new technologies industry. Like as you guys are building out all these different solutions, there's got to be a lot of barriers that you're facing around, promoting these tech forward solutions. Like, how do you guys think about like addressing and overcoming some of those barriers of somebody that is, hey, it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of mindset?
That's also a good question. I suppose how do I want to frame this?
For the record, we have the easy job of just like trying to be really good at asking questions to pick out the knowledge and learn from the people that we get to interview. So it's awesome.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm getting asked very good questions at the moment. So we've always had this attitude where with any new technology, disruptive technology, whatever you want to call it, in an industry, there's always going to be a diffusion of innovation in terms of adoption, right? So you start with and this is crossing the chasm for people that want to read on it, but you have your innovators and then your early adopters,
Watch
and
out.
your early
Watch
majority. I recently reread it, so it's top of mind. So our attitude was, we don't need to sell this to everybody today. We need to sell this to a few now and really continue to sharpen it as we move into these new phases of market penetration. And that's exactly what we've been doing. We found the innovators, right? Some of which have been on your podcast. Then we found the early adopters. And as the tool becomes, more commonly accepted, then you start to get the pragmatists and the folks that are, early majority, late majority. And then eventually the laggards are just going to have to adopt it because everybody else is using it. So, you bet. I think there's always objections in the sales cycle. And those are things that you have to be methodical about, cataloging and thinking through real retorts to, these reasons why people don't want to use it. But again, don't spend too much time with someone that might have more of the characteristics of a laggard if you're in the early stages, right? Find the people that can really build with you. And then at that point, you can kind of start to scale into mass market. So, we had the cheat code too, in that we were operators, so we could speak the language pretty well. And we were like, well, this is what we did at Red Dot and at SpareBox Storage. Here are the results we obtained, from an expense ratio standpoint, from a field employee ratio to a facility standpoint. So we were sharing some results with people that were like, oh, well, that's hard to argue with. And yeah, we've been really fortunate just to have the positive reception of all the things we've been doing. So, but yeah, make no doubt about it. There's certainly people that are like, I don't see it. So what we say to those people is like, great, we totally understand. We'll talk in a year. Right.
No, I appreciate the insight. I think, one, it's about educating, right? And I think most of the operators in self-storage specifically, they're here because self-storage is a really nice real estate asset. And so numbers speak, right? And so having the use case documents and being like, here's how this worked for an operator like you, and just continuing to educate around that. And eventually, as that, innovation is crossing the chasm, more and more touch points to prove out that the value is there, right? I've been working in conversational AI for 10 plus years. For 8.5 of those, people are like, no one wants to talk to a robot. And now we've got wind at our backs because you just continue to say, hey, proof point. And obviously ChatGPT and just different, GPT based models have made it much more mainstream. But it's just super, super interesting just to continue to educate people and say, hey, we're going to be here as you realize that you need us. And so then you're top of mind when they go, okay, the market's already moved there. I need to be able to compete. I've had those conversations with this person.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm sure you've been having those conversations over the last few years where enough of the, let's say the top 100 operators have been using it that other people are like, oh, okay, well, if company X and company Y and company Z is all using this now, I guess I'm in, right? I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah. We're in a really interesting space where because of ChatGPT, most everybody has played with this. Actually, it's funny. I was having dinner with somebody the other day and showing them ChatGPT, and they're like, "I've never used this," and I'm like, "I did not know that somebody like that existed." Still,
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're in a really interesting space where now consumer expectations is this conversational interface that's extremely fluid and dynamic, but there's a lot of complexity around it, right? There's a lot of nuanced, things behind it. And as much as has changed in the space that we operate in, a lot of things have not changed over 10 years still. And like the foundational things are still there. And so it's just a really interesting place for us to be in, because there's a lot of awareness, there is a lot of people that want things, but then it's really around the education around, well, like, okay, once we get past the surface level of an interface that you text somebody on or you text into, like, what is the thing that's actually behind it, which is for me a lot of fun to like nerd out on, like, okay, when you're going to buy a product that's in the conversational interface kind of realm, like, here are the things that you should be looking for and why you want these things, right? Whereas prior, we're just like fighting an uphill battle that like somebody wants to talk to a chatbot. So
Right.
it's really interesting as you cross the chasm, right? As technology gets adopted, the types of conversations change with consumers or potential consumers, right? It's just a really interesting piece of the puzzle. Maybe that like leads us
Yeah.
into like thinking forward. I'm curious, like, where's Jackson going? Like, where do you see things going? Are there problem spaces outside of auctions that get you excited still, or like what trends are kind of coming that you're hoping to jump onto?
Yeah. So the thing that I keep telling people, and I really do mean it, is I think we're operators at heart, so we're always going to be focused on kind of internal operation technology challenges. There's a lot of great companies like yourself doing more of the customer experience, customer engagements piece. And I think there's always going to be innovation on that front. I was at the Mountain West conference with Rodolfo the other day, and the CMO of Extra Space was kind of giving a presentation on trends that they were noticing in digital marketing, which had me pull up the Extra Space TikTok account, which now has 70,000 followers. And I was just like beside myself that's a
wild.
thing. Yeah, I was like, because when I was overseeing marketing too, I was like, absolutely not. We're not doing social media. Nobody cares. But now, lo and behold, Public has one, Extra has one. They have 70,000 followers. They have some videos with like 80,000 views. Which, if you told me that was going to happen, I would have said, yeah, I don't think so. But apparently, consumer behavior does shift over time.
What are they? What's on their TikTok? I mean, I'm not on TikTok. I've had this conversation with like Melissa Stiles that TikTok's not necessarily my platform of choice, but like, what are they doing?
Yeah. Well, let me preface this by saying I'm pretty allergic to social media, generally speaking. So, I mean, I'm going to be the curmudgeon-y old man about this, but you have like the 19-year-old's teenager with the little handheld mic that's like, here's what a 5x5 looks like. Wow, amazing. You can fit like a 1-bedroom apartment in this. And to me, it's easy for me to poo-poo that. But my guess is there's probably people on TikTok that are like, actually, I'm moving. Actually, this is really helpful. Like, this actually does give me guidance on. I mean, you're answering these kind of questions in your model, right? Like, what kind of how big of a storage unit do I need? Do I need climate control? And when you're inside the industry, it's like those are such simple, like who actually needs to know that? But you're very quickly reminded, like, most people using self-storage are using it for the first time. I'm sure that's something you guys know intimately well. And yeah,
it's interesting. The one, as you started talking about like the 5x5, I'm like instantly in my head. One of the social media trends that I get a kick out of is in the real estate space. Like the speed tours, like where they're like, but I'm like, I just imagine that for self-storage, they're like running into the 5x5 and like doing a handstand and then running into the 10x10 and doing something anyways. But to the point of
give that idea to Extra Space and then send them an invoice. I think you're onto something. I actually think that could be really effective.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about it. So
some of the
back
data
to your
that
original question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, some of the data that
go ahead.
comes out around the like first time users, right? Like, to your point, like a lot of these people find this content extremely helpful because they just don't know the product, even though it's a 3 walls and a door. I was just having a conversation with another friend who has to move, and he's like, I don't know what size I need, all this kind of stuff. Like, contract lengths is like one of the number one questions that comes into our platform, like, because people don't realize that this is almost, I don't know that any operator isn't doing a month by month lease term, right? But people don't understand that, right? They're like, oh, am I signing up for 12 months? Is this like my apartment? Is it 6 months? Like, can I do it by 3 months?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just people wanting to understand things that we take for granted on a day-to-day, that it's like a renewal thing. You can always cancel and move out. It's just interesting.
Yeah, you're totally right. I was taken aback by that because I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. But it's something that we take for granted. It's like, well, of course it's month to month. But if somebody's never used it, like how would they know? They're going to think about it like an apartment. They're like, well, that's a 12-month contract, so
You
I
just
don't think
don't
I'm going to
know.
need it for
You just
12
don't know,
months.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And then you're like, well,
All right.
you know,
So
sorry, go on, Rodolfo.
no, you're good. You're good. I'm just kind of curious, like to get into your head a little bit. We often go into the segment because of, obviously there's a lot going on in storage, but we always know the best out there also take learns and playbooks from outside of storage. And so I'm just kind of curious, any lessons learned from, you know, uh, other frameworks that you've studied, or maybe you admire a company or startup outside of storage. Um, Anything that has resonated with you that you said, hey, this could have a big impact. I'm going to use it as I'm building SpareBox.
Yeah, I do take a lot from Silicon Valley writ large. I'm careful. I don't necessarily want to take all of it because I think at times it can be pretty dogmatic, and can sometimes not necessarily be the right rhythm for every problem. But um, you know, the other piece of this too is, I have my agile, what is it, certified Scrum Master certification, certified Scrum Product Owner certification. So agile methodology is something I'm a big believer in, right? Which I guess the full title is agile software development, something along those lines. This idea of iterating, pulling risk forward, um, breaking things down, moving through things quickly. I'm a big believer in that kind of framework. The Toyota production system, I'm a big believer in too. And there's some really cool concepts that come out of that, like this idea of anybody on the production line can throw up a flag if something's wrong. What else? I used to be. I haven't had as much time to kind of do my homework on these things as I have in the past, but I've certainly spent a lot of time thinking about it. Again, I think coming from the agile Scrum world, this idea of like retrospectives is really cool and really important, right? Like setting down goals and actually reflecting on them is really key. Um, this is probably a little more controversial, but I like some of the things that come out of Elon Musk's operating playbook. The idea of like, if you're not contributing to a meeting, please leave. Right? It's like these things that we probably viewed as totally unacceptable 20 years ago. But when you look through, a fresh lens, to say, yeah, it probably doesn't make sense that we have a bunch of people sitting in a meeting not participating or getting any value out of it. Um, I really like Elon's. You can't automate something before you kind of go through it manually first. I'm a big believer in that, having learned that lesson before, where I tried to automate something first and it didn't work because I didn't fully understand the process. One of the big religious tracks you hear in Silicon Valley is first principles thinking. I'm sure you guys have heard that one before, where anybody hovering around Sand Hill Road is going to say, yeah, that's how you should operate. You shouldn't reason by analogy. You should break things into their smallest kernels of truth to then build your assumptions and your hypotheses off of. I'm getting a little out there, but those are probably the things I would say that I borrow from the most. I'm trying to think if there's any others that are coming to mind that I haven't thought about in a while. This one's kind of out of left field. There's a venture capitalist by the name of Randy Komisar, and he wrote a book, and the name's escaping me. I want to say Mountains Beyond Mountains, maybe. And he was the first person that I really saw just say plainly that business can be a really creative pursuit. And when I was recently transitioning out of my music world into tech, I found that really refreshing because I was like, yeah, like agreed. It's not just, did net income go up or down and by what percentage? Like we're actually creating something. And to me, that's really important, is kind of a driving factor for everything that I do. Like I really like creating. Um, so that was kind of a, word salad of random things that were coming to mind, but I'll leave you with those.
I love it. I think it holds very true today? And also, I think to y'all's point about just thinking outside of the, sometimes like you have to go against the grain and kind of see what's working out there and use that to educate. I'm assuming that's kind of one of the major things that um, you use today whenever you're building or leading this company too, right? It's like you kind of have to, you've had a front row seat, I feel like, how an operator has been pretty successful and grown so quickly, and also now behind the seat of actually building some modern storage infrastructure. I'm just kind of curious, from your standpoint, where is the market still behind, and where maybe are we ahead of the curve?
I think the market's still behind just operationally for the most part. I think people are innovating in their own unique ways. And in the last 5 years, and I'm sure COVID had a lot to do with this, but the leaps forward in innovation as it relates to customer experience and customer engagement, right? Like you all have been a huge part of that. But companies like Swivl, talking to Swivl, companies like Storagely and Storage Pug, right? Keep in mind what's the factoid. Extra Space didn't let you do online rentals until 2019, right? To me, as someone who wasn't from the conventional self storage world, I think that's crazy. Um, so I think we're behind on a lot of fronts still. I mean, someone who's kind of a firm believer in remote management, because that's all I've ever known and see work well. I think that is going to be the future, right? This is probably where I'm going to divide the audience a little bit, but because I think there's some people in the industry that will say like ultimately it boils down to the manager and the experience that you can deliver face to face. And while I think that's true in most consumer experiences, I think for self storage, it's not so complicated that someone can't self serve. And Jeff Greenberger made the point in his talk yesterday that the full title of our industry is self service storage. And that's how I always thought about it too. I woke up one morning many months ago and I was like, self storage, self service. Like, yeah, like people should be able to self serve. Why do you need to wait for a manager to get back from a tour with another customer, back from lunch, just to show you around the facility to then get a copy of your driver's license and make you sign some paperwork? Like to me, that just doesn't feel necessary. And if I were the consumer in that situation, yeah, I'd probably want to just be able to do this all online, show up, go straight to my unit, put my things in the unit, and then take off. So the industry has been moving in that direction slowly. Some have been, what's the quote? The future is already here. It's just not equally distributed. So there's some people that have already been doing that for many years. There's people that I think are still reluctant. It's interesting too, because the REITs claim that they just see better performance with manned operations from an NOI standpoint. But again, I think, I don't know, if I were to place a bet, I do think things are going to go more and more remote over time as the playbook becomes more mature, as the technology becomes easier to adopt, as people kind of get beyond this initial concern of will it work? Like I think we're going to see that. So I think that's kind of where we're behind. Where are we ahead? Is it a mean answer to say I don't think we're ahead anywhere? I'm trying to be fair. Are we ahead anywhere? Do you guys think we're ahead anywhere?
I think that we are going to be ahead in remote virtual ops. I think that's happening right now, and I think that's kind of a, you mentioned the REITs, but I think like people that are maybe just outside of the REITs, like they're really trying to understand how to operate with less headcount and do that in a virtual remote space. And I think because the product is like relatively simple for the most part. I mean, I know there's a lot of complexities to the product, but like when you compare it to other industries, for instance, I think that's going to allow for us to have playbooks and things that work in place sooner than other verticals, and other verticals are going to come and go, how in the hell did you do it?
Yeah,
So
there's
I don't
certainly
know. I don't know that
some.
we're ahead right now, but like I think we will be.
Mhm.
I mean, a really simple example, right? Like you mentioned Da Vinci locks, and this is like a constant thing, like just like automating overlock things, or like doing something where you're communicating asynchronously with an overlock.
Yep.
Like I don't know that I could go to another industry and be like, okay, well, like how would they do something like this, right? Like, I mean, past due payments in multifamily or apartment, short term rental, whatever it is, like you're not like, it's a pretty simple thing, but like they don't manage it the same way, right? And so there's processes in place. There's a simple, elegant solution in place. The SOPs for how to recover the lock is there, all these things, right? And so I think like when you start to like look at the bigger picture of the entire remote virtual managed thing, there's a lot of problems that I think self-storage operators are solving right now in a unique way that other verticals are going to look at.
And also to that point too, like I think you specifically could relate, like looking at it from the external, kind of what you guys were talking about, kind of more like the customer facing access and rental flow, but then a lot what you're doing, right? The internal side, I think there's a lot that could be more public. People should talk more about. So how you're doing, dispatching or internal ops,
Mhm.
how you're, messing with how you display inventory and how you even manage all that's going on in the back of office. I think there's a lot there that you know uh, c- we're doing a lot in that could go into other industries.
Yeah, I think so too. Right. We're at the end of the day, we are a commercial real estate asset. That's really like the fundamentals of this business. But what's unique about it is, month to month contracts with many, many tenants, as opposed to like a retail center where maybe you have 5 tenants and those are multi-year leases, right? So we almost have more opportunities. It's just the cycle of iterations faster, right? It's a higher frequency because we're seeing people come and go much more quickly. The Da Vinci lock thing is really interesting too, right? Because I know we'll continue to see the advent of the digital lock. I think both will have their place in the future. But yeah, I mean to that point, I think there's going to be a lot of parallels into other industries where we kind of solve the problem first, which is pretty cool.
I
So
think I think we could probably sit here and like I feel like we're just scratching the surface, but we're already over an hour of runtime. This comes
Goes
from
fast, huh?
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, Jackson, I think we've built a really nice like personal relationship at trade shows and stuff like that. So like we could probably sit here and
Hmm.
do like a 4-hour podcast and just keep going. So we'll have to have you on like again and maybe be the first repeat. I don't think we've had a repeat guest just yet, but maybe we'll do that in like 3 to 5 months or something and have you come back on and dig into stuff. But
I'd love
we like
to.
to close these with rapid fires. So Jackson, this might be hard for you because every time we ask you a question, you spend 15 minutes digging in super deep, which we
Answering
absolutely love.
it.
But
Yeah.
in this section, the whole point
you
is to
can't
get
talk
to,
too much, brother.
I know.
You can't talk too much.
Here I am rambling about rapid fire questions for 35 seconds.
I think
here,
if you
so.
saw my written communications, you would like my written communications are like 3 words. But yeah, when we're having like a dialogue, yeah, I can't shut up. So there you have it. Well, I'll try really hard though in this rapid fire. I'll try to be as concise as possible.
All right, we're going to start with a super easy one just to get your repetition and like muscle
Got it.
memory going with the quick one. What's your go-to coffee order? We were talking about Starbucks prior to the call today, so how do you order?
Black coffee.
Nice. All right, see, that's 2 words. We crushed it. So you've mentioned a couple of books today. I know that we had Crossing the Chasm. I just forgot the one that you just mentioned a second ago, but like, what's the book that you gift or recommend the most often in?
I'm going to give you 2 answers. In business, probably Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. If you guys have read that,
Hell yeah,
it's great.
Nice.
And then probably the Tao of Pooh by Benjamin Hoff. Outside of business,
I've
that
heard
book
good
really
things.
really rocked my foundation when I read it when I was like 24.
Writing it down.
Yeah, It was well, I don't want to ruin the rapid fire rhythm, so we can
No,
talk more about it afterwards.
you're crushing it. One tool or piece of tech you couldn't live without in your workday.
I mean, the easy answer is ChatGPT, but I use some version of that all the time.
Do you have a favorite model that you like to use? You always going to ChatGPT 4.0
I mean, I'm using
or
I'm just defaulting.
yeah,
Yeah, mostly. I'm not doing anything that's like interesting enough that I need to switch to, Gemini 2.5 or something if I'm like coding, you know. So I'm most of my prompts are fairly vanilla and generic.
What is the most overhyped tech trend in self storage right now?
Oh my gosh, that's a dangerous one.
You're warmed up.
Let's come back to that one. I have to think about that one for a minute.
I will ask it again later.
Yeah, good.
all right, I've got a couple more easy ones. Like, and I think I know the answer to this one, but like, how do you handle stress? Like, make sure that you're grounded and you show up to work as the best version of yourself on a day to day.
Not well. No, I mean, I am someone who I think harbors stress a little more than others. CrossFit's probably the answer you're looking for. That helps tremendously. I used to meditate quite a bit and I've fallen out of practice, but that was really helpful at one point in my life. And I still have enough of the residual effects that I think it is helpful day to day. Reading a good novel before I go to bed too, to kind of dissociate. So that's kind of my holy trinity of self-care is, exercise or training, reading and meditating.
Nice. All right, so follow up to the CrossFit one. I'm not going to spend that much time, but obviously, CrossFitters
We have
gotta talk
to.
about CrossFit.
We got to
man.
talk about it. Yeah.
What's your favorite CrossFit movement?
The snatch.
Ooh, all right. Are you going from a hang or a power?
Full squat snatch.
Okay. What's the least favorite CrossFit movement?
Running. Which I think is every CrossFitter. That's not really a CrossFit movement, but that's the one that everybody hates. I think strict handstand push-ups are really, really hard. And that's probably where you shine with your background. But yeah, I find that to be pretty challenging.
Nice. Yeah, I love any type of gymnastics is a lot of fun for me. Makes me feel like a teenage boy again, which is
sure.
It's a ton of fun. So that's all I got from a rapid fire. I'm
I have one more. I have one more because I'm
good.
curious, Jackson. If not self storage, what industry would you reinvent next?
I again, in not doing this rapid fire thing very well. There's a company I found in Denver that has a platform that just helps like companies that manufacture nuts, bolts, and screws get organized. And I think that stuff is like really compelling. It's like something that you would never think about as like a layperson, but like there's a meaningful industry out there that's just way behind the times. So there's a bit of an analog to that. So funny enough, we didn't really get into it, but one of the companies I was talking about working with before I joined SpareBox Storage was a company called Atomos Space. So they were building low Earth orbit space buses, effectively. Space tugs is what they call them. So it took satellites from this like little, low Earth orbit bus stop to its final orbit position.
That's awesome.
And I was going to join their company. I was like, boy, that's quite the departure from terrestrial storage. But yeah, so while I think like the really cutting edge high tech, like Neuralink type stuff is super fascinating to check out, I also just think like bringing some really simple, easy to use, easy to implement tech to industries that are running the world around us that we don't think about very often is super compelling. So it'd probably be, I don't know, like I think people in our industry always say car washes, but like maybe an example like that.
Love it. That's awesome.
And then for overhyped tech, because I'm not trying to evade.
Okay.
I think the digital lock is perhaps overhyped right now, but I think eventually that will just have to become the standard way of doing things. Yeah, I think that's the answer I'll choose. I apologize to anybody in the digital lock game, but I think it's super cool. It obviously makes perfect sense, but we still have some hurdles just as it relates to cost and failure rate and all those things. And year over year, they're improving. So there will come a day where I think it'll become the standard, but how far in the future remains to be seen.
Jackson, before we get off and kind of say goodbyes and stuff, man, like where can people find you? And like,
where can people find me? Well, so SpareBoxTech.com is obviously SpareBox Technologies, the company that I'm running and leading. So if you want to get to learn more about what we're up to, that's a great place to go. You can find us on LinkedIn as well. You can find me on LinkedIn. My email is jackson@SpareBoxTech.com if you want to reach out directly. My phone number, no, I'm not going to give up my phone number, but those are probably the best places to find me. I don't really do social media outside of LinkedIn.
And home address where they can send the black coffee.
Yes. Oh yeah. I'll take a black coffee.
Social
anytime.
Security number.
Yeah. It's 631. No.
No, I'm kidding. Jackson, thanks so much for joining us, man. This is awesome, dude.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. You guys are doing really important work in the industry, and it's a lot of fun it's always fun to just pick your brain or where you think things are going, what problems that you're solving. And it's fun too when I talk to our customers that are also using you, that like kind of bucket us together. It seems they're like, oh yeah, I was just talking to Mason about this thing that we're working on building, and it's cool. I think it's really positive for the industry as a whole to have people that think a little different and creatively, but ultimately are ultimately just trying to help operators operate better. So I think your entire team really embodies that. So excited to see what more you guys create and build and bring to the industry.
As always, thanks for listening. You can find out more information about this episode and more at selfstoragelab.com.